We're good. We're getting started soon. Thank you all for joining. These are our hosts, to those of you watching. These are our amazing hosts today who are going to help us talk about this great topic. Today's session is a deep dive into all things digital nomading in Africa. I'm Paul. I'm one of the hosts with Wi-Fi Tribe, and I actually started my whole digital nomad journey in Mauritius with Wi-Fi Tribe. It was my first destination. I had no idea where it was. I had to actually Google it, and I found out that it's an island off of Madagascar over there, and it's a really beautiful, incredible place. And it just really speaks to the diversity of cultures and landscapes and adventures to be had in the continent of Africa. There's so many amazing different places, and our hosts here have been to many of them and can share some amazing things with us today. I'm really excited to dive in and hear all about this. And our three hosts I'm going to quickly introduce, and then we'll get into the topics that we're going to discuss today. So starting with Akua. Akua is a product marketer and storyteller. She's a Ghanaian American digital nomad who's traveled to 70 plus countries, which is absolutely wild. So cool. Everywhere from Senegal to Cote d'Ivoire to Gambia. And then Wei is a startup founder and consultant. His travels have taken him to Morocco, Mauritania, Western Sahara, Rwanda, Kenya, Senegal, where he now lives. So really excited to hear about that wealth of knowledge you've got as well. And then Julie is a human rights lawyer. She's represented refugees in Uganda and fought for human rights in South Africa and still maintained the digital nomad lifestyle while doing all that. So super cool. And really cool, diverse perspectives on everything. And so it's going to be really great to hear from you and learn from your knowledge and experience. Awesome. So we're going to dive into this. And basically, it's a roundtable discussion. So I'm just going to ask for some input from each of you, starting with the first topic, which is favorite digital nomad-friendly destinations in Africa. So what places are your favorite that you've traveled to? What's kind of your top of the list for places you'd recommend to friends and stuff and that you love? And what are some specifics about those places that somebody should know before going there? Maybe we could go around, do one each to start and kind of talk a little bit about each place and then continue on if there's a few more to add. I'm sure there's a million to add, but maybe we can just start with one each. And I'll turn it over. Maybe Julie, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I have spent the last 2 summers, African summers, in Cape Town. And so Cape Town is by far one of my favorite places to digital nomad. I think the things that make Cape Town so wonderful is the natural beauty, the diversity in terms of the experiences, from hiking to swimming to doing wines to trail running. And then there's a lot of just, it's affordable. And then you have lots of different cool active lifestyle. And then I also have been able, and then there's like summer concerts in gorgeous botanical gardens and kayaking. The list goes on. And so Cape Town is by far one of my favorite places to nomad in Africa.
Awesome. Akua, do you want to take it next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's hard to pick one place in Africa, but if you're gonna hold me to one, I'm gonna be on my soapbox about my home country, Ghana, and say that it's an amazing place to remote work. It's not one that I think a lot of people go to. Accra, the capital city, is a beautiful city. The people are amazing. It's part of our culture to be very hospitable. So they welcome you with open arms. They're very warm and primarily speak English. So if you're an English speaker, first or second language, you can get around pretty easily. They have a few good co-working spaces, a few solid co-working spaces. One of them that I love is called Burrow. Highly recommend. And then a couple of other that you'll see around Africa. Impact Hub is another big one. And I think one of the good things about remote working there is you have an opportunity to dive into the culture on a weekend trip. You can go to trips to the coast to see the slave castles. You can go and learn about the Ashanti culture if you go more into the interior to Kumasi. So you have the opportunity to be in the city and get the city vibe, the parties, the vibe, and all of that. And then you can go out and explore a bit more of the history and the culture of Ghana.
Awesome. And Wei, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So it really kind of depends who I'm talking to. I'm going to cheat. I actually have like 2. So I'm biased in both ways. So I'm based here in Dakar. So obviously that's like a place that has a special place in my heart. And then my wife is Rwandese. So I have to say Rwanda as well, or else I get in trouble after this call. But it really kind of depends. I think the car is a little bit more off the beaten path, especially for English speaking professionals and people who aren't bilingual French English. But if you're more adventurous and you like to work remotely from a place that's a little bit more, how do I say, I guess, edgy in a way. It's a little bit more like exciting, a little bit more adventurous in a lot of ways than people probably are used to, especially if they're coming from like the Western world. Whereas Kigali in Rwanda in general kind of has this reputation of being like Africa for beginners, right? Because it's less of a transition. It's much more probably familiar in a lot of ways. Now, they both have their pros and cons, of course. I'll speak just to Dakar because I've been living here now for 4 years. Really beautiful city. If you like the sea, if you like nature, it's surrounded by water on 3 sides. There's like several islands that you can get to. The Wi-Fi is amazing. The development community globally lives and works here. The UN, there's Save the Children, there's many different development finance institutions and nonprofits and social impact organizations. And so the city itself is very wired because you have a lot of the global community working and living here. So the infrastructure is strong for in terms of like Wi-Fi and connectivity. But then you also can get to a lot of interesting places in West Africa from here. So if you want to, for example, take a day trip to the Gambia, you can do that. If you wanted to take a short flight to other neighboring countries that are a little bit less developed, you can also do that as well. So I like it for that reason. It gives you a lot of optionality, and I think it's also a place where if you want to practice your French, you can do that too.
Cool. That's awesome. Those are great overviews, and I really love that. And you just touched on, some key things we're going to talk about next, which is the connectivity in different places. It's really important, obviously, as digital nomads to do our work. The work funds the fun, as we say. And so internet is obviously key. People are looking for that and reliability in that way. So maybe if you could speak to that a little bit, are there some places that you found are really great, as you just mentioned, or are there some places that maybe you might avoid or try to have backups in place, and what might those be? How would you approach this as a new digital nomad going to a country in Africa? And we can jump around to whoever has something to say. Yeah, if you want to start, go.
Yeah. I can. So I said Cape Town is my favorite, and I think Cape Town, South Africa, there's lots of conversations about connectivity there because of load shedding. Load shedding means that through periods throughout the day, the government turns off the electricity. And so people have concerns about that. But there are definitely ways around that with generators and having Wi-Fi connected devices that don't turn off when when the power goes off. But I'd say in general, I spent significant time in Southern Africa, significant time in East Africa, and less time in West Africa. But almost any of the cities that you would be in have good connectivity, and you can always hotspot from your phone. And more of the countries are having eSIMs, and Airlo is everywhere, so it's getting quite easy to connect no matter where you are. The only times that it's hard is like top of Kilimanjaro. You don't actually want to work from the top of Kilimanjaro too, so or middle of an island, whatever. But like I think in general, most places will have good enough connectivity.
Go ahead. I see you. You're about to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will. I agree with that. I think over the past 6 months, I've been through Africa, and there hasn't been a moment where I was nervous or was like, oh shoot, I'm going to miss this important call. I will say my rule of thumb is to always have a backup. I do eSIMs. There are some countries I've Googled ahead, like in Namibia, that they don't have their eSIM, I guess, doesn't work or something. So you do need a chip. You actually need a SIM in your phone. So always get an unlocked phone, nomad tip. So that's always my backup plan. I did have a situation, luckily I was just traveling for the weekend, but when I went to Gambia from Senegal, I landed and there was no internet anywhere. They were just like, oh yeah, it's not working for anyone. And I was like, shoot, like, what do I do? But luckily I didn't need it because it was the weekend. But I think you definitely have to be prepared in case a situation like that happens, right? Is a hotel an option for you if they maybe have Wi-Fi versus a network? Is there some, again, co-working or some kind of country club that you can tap into? I would say just be ready for a plan B, C, and D, but always have those options before you land somewhere.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both Julie and Akua. Am I saying that right?
Aquia.
Acquia. Okay,
Yes.
Acquia. Yeah, I mean, you definitely want options. I think probably just my experience living here, the issue is not staying connected, but like for example, I'm on hotspot right now, so I just moved to a new apartment, and it's gonna take them at least 2 or 3 months to get the Wi-Fi installed. Like just because there's just like a lot of inefficiency, and like I have to keep following up with them. I have to like keep going to the office. So in my experience, I found at least here in Senegal that it's not so much is the Wi-Fi strong. It's very strong, but it's just actually getting the infrastructure set up in your own apartment if you're staying at for a longer period of time. But you know, if you're like staying in Airbnb, obviously that problem is solved. And if you have like co-working spots, or if you like to work from coffee shops, all of that hasn't really been an issue. Surprisingly, as well, I spent some time in Morocco and actually did a project where I was living in the desert for a month, and the Wi-Fi was like amazing. I was surprised. Like, so I thought it was going to be a situation where like I was just going to be off the grid for an entire month, and it ended up being really great. Same thing in Rwanda. We went to a province where they grow tea. It's pretty remote, and the connectivity was really good as well. So it really just depends. Every country is different, but you just want to have options always, and I think that's true for any country, to be honest.
So true. Yeah. Some of the most connectivity problems I've ever had were in Scotland. It was just the city there doesn't have very good infrastructure for it. So you never know where you're going. Always have a backup seems to be the key here. So that's great. And speaking to safety, which is a question that we got in from someone here. First off, what are some general safety tips and anything you'd like to advise people on if they're thinking about traveling in Africa? But also, what about female safety specifically? And if you're a woman alone, does that make it harder? Are there places you wouldn't recommend? That was a question that came in from somebody attending. So whoever wants to jump in and speak to those, that would be great to hear from all of you about different takes on safety.
Yeah, I can start here. When it comes to traveling alone as a woman, I actually predominantly solo travel, so I can definitely speak to this. I think there's a couple rules of thumb that I just hold for myself, and a part of it is I tend to not go out at night, like at dark, unless I'm with a local that I trust or with someone I know, or I'm going in a neighborhood or a place that is known to be safe. I always ask for locals, even in the airplane, airport, people I meet, Yango, taxi drivers, whoever, hey, like, is this place safe where we're going? Is it safe for me to walk around? If they say no, I heed their instruction, right? I just listen to them. I don't question it. I don't think, oh, I feel strong today. No, I just heed the instruction. So I tend to lean on the safer side of things. There isn't anywhere I would say I wouldn't go unless the US government's like, this is an absolute no-go, like you're not allowed to be in this country. But I would always take precautions, again, making sure if you feel a little unsafe in terms of landing in a place and getting a taxi, or again, getting an Uber, whatever app there is there, I would say reserve a car ahead of time, check with your accommodation. If it's an Airbnb, help you set up transportation, have a hotel set up transportation, leverage the local, your local contacts as best as you can. I would say those are the big things I try to keep in terms of safety. Oh, and one more thing I'll say too. I was so afraid to go to Morocco for some reason, like 7 years ago when I went, and me and my friends had the best time. So when you read all these things online that say, hey, this place is scary, this place is this and that, take it with a grain of salt, but make sure that you're respectful of the culture, you're respectful of the people. That's not your country. So present yourself in a way that you're open to what may be there.
Yeah, really not much to add. I just think it's finding that balance, because you want to trust what people are telling you. But also don't let it deter you from going somewhere, because there's always going to be a way to accept, if, like, as Kue said, if it's on the Department of State's warning list, then don't do it, like a level 4 or 5. But like, you'll just have to put in a little bit more effort in some of those places that you've heard are less friendly for females or for just tourists. But I have not had any issues. I lived in Kampala, Uganda, multiple times, and I would get on the way to get around Kampala is you flag down bodas, which are motorcycle guys, and I would get on the back of a motorcycle at 2 a.m. to get home. And I was aware I wasn't, I was aware and all of that. So I think, but it's always best to like have your motorcycle driver or have your taxi or get those recommendations from friends.
Yeah, I mean, not much to add here. To be honest, I think they both covered everything. I would say, like, I haven't had any situations either. Like, things that have come up, I think, have been more like misunderstandings in language or in culture sometimes. So the only thing I can add is just, if you can ahead of time, try to learn some of the language, like a few words even goes a really long way. And really try to understand the culture and how things are different and how they approach certain situations, like even things like personal space or like one thing, especially coming here, I felt like people were, kind of like more, I felt like a little bit more aggressive, but in general, it's just like the culture is just different than what I was used to. So it wasn't necessarily like they were doing it in like a malicious way, but it was just more straightforward and direct in a lot of ways than what I was used to. And that's something I clearly could have like researched or understood ahead of time. And like digging into the culture and seeing how things are done, learning some of the language, that goes to clear up a lot of misunderstandings that can pop up when you're in a country. And again, I don't think that's specific to Africa. I think that's any country you're going to. Super important to learn some of the language and try to embrace and understand the culture as much as possible.
Yeah, those are all great points. Thanks very much. And I think that's really helpful for people to know who might, be new to traveling and kind of not sure about these things. So it can be really important to kind of feel, okay, you can do it, but you got to do it safely and you got to figure out ways that are going to work, and also do your research and get to know the culture locally and stuff. As you said, language can be such a key, just some key phrases can be so useful, and people really appreciate you taking the time to do that, I've seen. So yeah, the next point kind of leans into safety a bit as well, which is, how do you manage to connect with other digital nomads and locals and people while you're traveling around different countries in Africa? How have you done that? And is community an important piece to you while traveling as a digital nomad? Akuya, you said that perhaps you've solo traveled quite a bit in the past, but you have traveled community-wise as well. So I'm curious if you have some insights on that. So maybe we'll start with you on that, and basically about finding community and meeting people while traveling.
Yeah, yes, I have done quite a bit of solo travel, and my go-to, and I didn't necessarily learn this while traveling, I just learned this while living in a new city in the US, is just to do the things I love, and that naturally will attract people that also enjoy those things. So I'm pretty determined and persistent with my workout schedule. So I'll find a CrossFit gym, or I'll find like an F45 I found in different parts of Africa, or different gyms, and have been able to meet people that way. And then like meet people that you see enough that you then trust and then can, hang out with outside of just the gym. There have been different cities where I've gone to church, and that has also brought a really amazing community, a really grounding community as well. And I would say art museums and different festivals has also helped me to meet people as a solo traveler, right? I met some of the coolest people whenever I was in Dakar a few months ago, just going to different art galleries and art museums. They weren't locals, so I luckily got to speak English with them, but we also got to hang out and see different parts of Dakar. ways in which then I flip the switch and say, okay, I'm tired of my solo time. I want people time. I'll tap into a community like Wi-Fi Tribe and make sure that I'm going to and joining different trips that I'm really excited about. Upcoming, going to Rwanda, which I'm super stoked about, as well as Egypt in November. So I'm looking forward to knowing that that month is going to be dedicated to hanging out with people, right? Like-minded travelers. But now I can like enjoy my solo time in the between, because I know that, you know, I'll have that people time later on.
Yeah, I think in addition to everything that was just said, one thing, like beside like finding co-working spots, cafes, and just being open and friendly and learning some of the local language so you can meet other digital nomads, but also other locals that are just working from a cafe. I have found a lot of the places that I have lived, and there's also a difference between living and being a digital nomad, but a lot of expats have a Facebook group. And so that's an easy, like, I think there's a little bit more reliance in the expat community on Facebook and meetups than maybe we do as digital nomads, where it's Instagram or just a Slack and that kind of thing. So I would definitely suggest like looking up on Facebook what the expat community is if you want to find to find groups to do some of the activities with. But like I've also joined running clubs. When I lived in Johannesburg, I was in a running club there, and it was my favorite experience because it brought together people from all over the city, all different race, all different class, all different professions. And because we were running in groups, we were able to go to like the places in Johannesburg that you're not supposed to go. And so I think, again, just finding like doing the things that you love and finding the community through that, and Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all really great. I mean, I think for me, what's helped a lot has been honestly work. So I'm working in an executive search. So just by nature of the type of work I do, very like outward, reaching out to people, setting up calls, getting coffee. So I'm already used to that. And so LinkedIn has been like a powerful tool to just continue to connect with people, and even posting and sharing that, hey, I'm going to be in this place. And then you just kind of get flooded or messages of people who are interested in like meeting up, or they want to show you around. So that's really helped me a lot. And then also just on the entrepreneurial side as well, I'm always like trying to understand how business and entrepreneurship and basically like local economies and ecosystems work. And I like to tinker and try things. And so even like my first time in Rwanda, I was like connecting with business people, but then actively like looking and seeing how businesses work, and doing like, for example, my first trip, I did a tour of a tea factory. And through that, I met someone who had studied in the US and moved back, and he was running like a tea farm. And we got drinks, and then his friends came, and that's how I met local people. So just being like open to following your curiosities, and as you do that, you know, doors start to open, you start to meet people. So that's what's really worked well for me.
That's great. Yeah. There's always awesome people out there around doing cool stuff that you can connect with. And there are communities in place to help you do that. There's a couple of digital nomad programs, including Wi-Fi Tribe, Remote Year, Hacker Paradise. There's these other ones. But you kind of can do some research into those if that's what you're looking for, and having some people around and see what's going to be right for you. So that could be really helpful to kind of getting started in this, I've found. Especially for me, actually. It was really helpful. So yeah, cool. So in terms of visa and work permit regulations, a lot of questions came in about this. Basically, and it's okay if nobody has the expertise in this, and nothing we say here is, you know, legally, you know, exactly the truth. You got to look into this for yourselves, of course. But are there any countries that you all are familiar with that have good digital nomad visas in Africa that people might want to check out? Or are there requirements or regulations that people have run into that are challenges you've come across maybe while traveling? Anything there? Anybody have something to speak to on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know specific like digital nomad visas, to be honest with you. I haven't run across any countries that I've been to here in the continent that have that really in place, or make it easy. I will say, like, Rwanda in general, the government has done a really, really good job of making it easy to visit, invest, work, start businesses, even in the country. Like, super easy. I think you can start a business online in like less than 24 hours in Rwanda. Maybe maybe it's like 48, but it's like, it's not that long. And yeah, I found them to be like generally helpful when it comes to any kind of like visa or like getting into the country, or even if you're curious about doing business. So I would imagine staying for an extended period of time, like if you wanted to work remotely from Rwanda for like 6 months or even longer, I don't think there's much red tape there. Other countries, they've been like a little less organized in Rwanda. Rwanda is very, very organized and structured, and they've done a great job, like kind of turning things around, especially since the genocide that happened. But like Senegal is a little bit more unorganized. But here, because I live here and I'm a permanent resident, I actually went through kind of a third party. It's an American woman who relocated here, and she married a Senegalese guy, and she started this business that basically helps other businesses to people who are like relocating to this part of the world. They basically help them get set up, whether it's housing, whether it's like government and that sort of thing. So typically, if a country is a little bit more complicated in the legality of things, I recommend trying to find like a third party who's an expert in that specific country or region even. And that can really help to facilitate things in a way where if you do have to pay for it, but it's at least you know that everything is done correctly, and you don't have to run the gamut of like going to this office and then they send you to that office and then they send you back where you started. Yeah, I think it's important to like work with someone who knows how things work in that market, and that will just save you time and money ultimately.
I think one thing to be, again, I don't really know anything specific about the digital nomad visa, but I think as a US and an Austrian citizen, I have the privilege of going many places and just getting visas on arrival. And I think that is not as common in Africa. And so you have to just do a little bit more prep work beforehand and apply. And also because a lot of countries are bureaucratic and slow, it sometimes can take a little bit longer than you can't just, oh, I did it a day ago and now I'm ready. So you got to just think ahead about that. One question that I think people like stress a lot of people out that are thinking about being a nomad in South Africa is that there is for many passports there is a 3-month rule, so people will leave and then come back, but you can't just leave and go to a bordering country. You usually have to go somewhere else. The actual law, again, not legal advice, even though I am a lawyer, but I'm not a South African immigration lawyer, is that you actually have to go to your home country and then return, but they don't really check that. So I just check in with locals, nomads that are there. There's always many different chats that are going on.
Yeah, I think Julie and Wei have really good advice from the longer term living in a place, actually being there. Most of my travels have been as a nomad, so being in a place for 90 days or less. I also am a dual citizen, US passport and Ghana passport. So that helps me travel quite a bit of Africa without needing a visa, and then quite a bit of the rest of the world without needing a visa as a US citizen. But I would say that the nomad visas I'm aware of in Africa, I just had to look it up because I had the list and then forgot, but Mauritius has one, Seychelles has one, Namibia has one, Cape Verde has one, and then I think South Africa, if they don't yet, they're planning on doing one. And most of those, I'm also not a tax expert by no means, but most of those you'll need some kind of either income requirement or bank statement requirement you'll have to meet. Oftentimes it's best if you're working full-time for a company to make sure your company is okay with these locations, because sometimes your company may have certain types of restrictions in terms of where you can work, especially if you're a fully remote company. Or I should say, even if you're a fully remote company, there are some places where you might not be able to legally work, and especially for duration. So check on that. And then the visas, I think, are anywhere from 6 months to a year, and then you can renew, or there might be some kind of path to citizenship if that's what you are, or permanent residency if that's what you're seeking. So those are options as well. But if not, you can do the whole step in and then leave and come back thing as well, however you'd like to play it.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. And it's so cool, I bet, for people who haven't traveled yet in Africa at all, to hear this and kind of like feel a little bit more that it's accessible, that they have this way to figure it out. You know, it does take a little research sometimes with the visas and different things, but you can make it happen. So it's all good. Now is a very fun topic, one of my favorite ones we're going to cover today, which is must-do adventures in Africa. And so your most recommended experiences, aka like you can't go here and not do this. And if you could name some of the top adventures you've had and maybe tell some stories around it, that's cool. I just want to quickly mention Namibia because I got to travel there with Wi-Fi Tribe on a chapter, and it was absolutely incredible. It's one of my favorite places I've ever traveled to in the world. It's just landscapes are like beautiful. And so for me, that would be it. And getting out to Deadvlei, which is the valley with those trees that are hundreds of years old, thousands. I don't really know. I'm very bad at timelines, but yeah, anyway, it's beautiful and really, really cool. So yeah, who wants to jump in and talk about adventures in Africa that they'd recommend?
I'm happy to start. I feel like the list can go on and on. I'll start with Uganda because that is the place that I've lived the most. So Uganda, I think the things that you can't miss are rafting on the Nile. Uganda is the source of the Nile. If anyone adds me on WhatsApp, you will see that my profile picture, which has been there since I think 2011, is me on the top of a raft that's like this. And so you got to get that picture. There's also bungee jumping over the Nile. In addition, you can do this in Rwanda, the Congo, or Uganda is gorilla trekking. It's quite expensive, but it is definitely a once in a lifetime opportunity. I mentioned earlier Kilimanjaro. I have had the privilege of climbing Kilimanjaro way, way long ago. Definitely, if you are into hiking, getting one of those, the top peaks in the world is an unforgettable experience. There, one of the funny stories was I was summiting with a group of like 10 other friends, and altitude sickness is real. One of the girls and she was the organizer of the trip. And so I think that the guides felt really bad and wanted to get her to summit, but she was hallucinating. She thought rocks were people jumping off the mountain. On summit day, I started walking and I was very nervous because I got a headache all of a sudden. And then I just moved my headlamp and I was like, oh, no altitude sickness for me. But I also had to summit in a blizzard, so I couldn't even see like my hand. So that one is supposed to be a once in a lifetime opportunity, but I feel like I need a second chance at that. Some places in Southern Africa that I love, Lesotho, it's a landlocked country within South Africa. I also hiked one of the largest mountain there, and I think it just in the middle of nowhere, and you just see rolling hills for ages. And I just thought it was one of the most beautiful landscapes I've experienced. And then Victoria Falls. Victoria Falls is one of the largest waterfalls in the world. And it is just super, super impressive. If you have the ability to see it by helicopter, it's just seeing it by helicopter and seeing the rainbow over it. And then also there's something called Devil's Pool that's not always open, so check beforehand. But you literally get to swim on the top of this massive waterfall. I can keep going, but I will let others jump in.
Go ahead, Wei.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would piggyback on the gorilla trekking, even though I haven't done it yet. But like everyone I talked to in Rwanda, and I think it's also in Uganda as well, and parts of Congo, says that is like an amazing experience. Personally, I just have two things I want to quickly mention. So in Rwanda, there's this area called Kitabi. And again, I think I spoke about this earlier. This is like a tea growing part of the country. They get like a lot of rainfall. And so we went to, I think it's called the Kitabi Eco Center or like Kitabi Tea Fields or something to that extent. But it's basically like a tea plantation that like stretches on for like miles and miles. And you just get like, Rwanda is nicknamed like the land of 1,000 hills. So you just have literally like hill after hill, and we hiked from the center of the basically like the eco center to where they actually process tea. And as you're walking, you see the evolution basically where you have like seedlings, and then you move on to the next part and it's getting bigger, and then you see people like working and cutting trees, and like it's basically like as you walk towards the processing center, you see how the tea is actually processed and you're learning, and it's like really beautiful as well. And then once you get there, they give you like a whole tour of the actual tea center, and then they try to sell you like tea and like, but it's like a really cool experience, especially if you're into business and you're thinking about like, even if you're not, but like I am, and I was looking at it from that lens. I was like, this actually, like they sold me on it. I was like, how can I order some kilos of tea to bring back to Senegal so I can like start a tea business? So that was really cool. I enjoyed that, and the tea was awesome too. And they also have a really big coffee culture too. So if you're into that, which at that point I wasn't, but I am now. So next time maybe I'll do a coffee tour. Then in Morocco, of course, I did the Sahara Desert. So I already talked about living there for a year. I did a workaway experience where I was like doing like an agricultural project in the desert. But then I also did the kind of more touristic camel ride to the desert, and then you sleep there for like 2 nights. And so that was a really awesome experience too. Just a chance to like experience culture, ride a camel, which was cool, and then like have the tents in the desert, and there's like 0 light pollution, and you can just look up and see stars everywhere. It was a really beautiful experience, something I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Yes, I'm like Julie, where I have so many in my mind, and I just want to tell you all of them, and I'll try to be as succinct as I can. But I'm actually in Namibia right now, so I agree, Paul, one of the most beautiful countries I've ever been to. If you're here, you must. I know safari, in East Africa is very well known, but they also have an amazing safari here where you can see white rhinos, which are pretty rare across Africa. So got to see that in Etosha National Park. Also got to Sossusvlei, which if you can just think of like mountains, but they're all, instead of mountains, they're sand dunes. You just climb up these sand dunes and just get to see the expanse of just nature, right? There's such a small population here and such a large landmass, but most of the land is protected or it's owned or it's reserved. So a lot of nature to be able to experience, and a lot of dunes by the beach, et cetera, here in Namibia. Again, I'll go back to Africa. I'll go back to Ghana, excuse me, my home country, and say that if you're gonna go to Ghana, let me recommend you go after Christmas and through the new year. And they call that time Dirty December. Dirty December, Dirty December. It is such a vibe. And the purpose of going for that time is there's all kinds of parties. There's all kinds of meetups. There's all kinds of conferences as well. It's not just a party vibe. There's tech conferences, there's economic forums. They bring a lot of really smart minds together, a lot of modern and fashionable minds. I think last time, this past December, they had Bazoma St. John having her badass women's forum. So there's all kinds of minds that come together during that time. There's also a music festival, used to be called Afrochella, now Afrofuture. So you have music as well and an art scene, and it's just a huge party. Most of the parties last all night. You wake up, or you wake up at night to go to a party, and then you stay out until the sun rises on the Body Beach. You're just watching the sunrise, having breakfast, and then you go to sleep, right? So it's just so much fun. If you don't go in December, okay, you have to go twice, but also you could go in the summertime. May, June, I would say is a good time to go as well. You want to go and see, sad news, but the slave castles, and really understand how a lot of humans were literally being taken, moved to all over the world where a lot of the African diaspora is now and like where the source of a lot of that was. And also you could go and go to the Ashanti, the seat of the Ashanti Kingdom, which is in Kumasi, and see where the king resides in Menchia Palace, and learn again about the Ashanti Kingdom, where a lot of the gold and one of the richest empires on the African continent was a long time ago. And you can see where a lot of that is now dispersed around the world from colonization. But really just a place that has a lot of nature, a lot of history. Go in December, but if you don't go in December, go in the summer.
That's amazing. That sounds so incredible. And everything that everyone mentioned sounds so cool. I feel like we could probably sit here and talk for like 5 hours between all of us about different amazing adventures. To speak to Atosha, though, we did a safari there. I've never been on a safari anywhere else, but we were driving back, and there was a leopard just walking along the side of the road next to us, and that was wild. Like you don't see those a lot, I guess, and that was so cool. It was like 10 feet from us, which I later learned they can jump about 10 or 15 feet from not moving. So you never know. But we got some amazing photos. It was really incredible, but really cool safari there. I definitely second that. And we also in Morocco went hot air ballooning over the desert when we went out there, and I was fine with it until one guy we had with us who's a pilot was nervous and he was freaking out, and I was like, oh no. But he was actually fine. He just has a fear of not being in control, I guess. But it was all good. It was super fun and really fun and really beautiful. Just incredible to see the sunrise from up there. So cool. Again, maybe we can chat another time and hear about all these other stories because I'm sure there's a million. But yeah, I just want to leave enough time at the end of this for some Q&A so that people can ask some questions via chat in here. But before that, I just wanted to ask, is there anything else that you all would like to cover that you'd like to mention in terms of people starting digital nomading in Africa? Anything else you'd quickly like to share as kind of just, you know, some advice or tips or tricks?
I think I just to jump in, like I think from like a professional kind of I hate to use the word networking, but I guess like networking, there's a lot that's happening across the continent. So and I see a lot of it just because of the nature of the work I do through exec search. And so I would just anyone curious about working from here or visiting here, even there's a lot of opportunity to like get involved with different projects that are happening or meet people who are working on really interesting, the cutting edge of a lot of projects that are happening in this part of the world. So I think yes, it's great from like things to do and lifestyle and all of that, but also if you're interested in like really anything. I mean, there's so many different sectors and parts of the global economy that are really blossoming and starting to become have their epicenter here on the continent. I think it's a great opportunity for people who are looking to new horizons, to try things, to learn about sectors that maybe they're already an expert in or are potentially considering like transitioning into. So yeah, I just want to put that out there. People I've found in general are really open-minded and would love to connect with other people who are from different parts of the world. And it's a great place to connect and learn about just different projects that you don't always see in more established or like Western economies.
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah, I
second
really
that.
like
I
that
think there's
advice.
so much. Oh.
No, go ahead, Julie. Okay. I was just going to actually say something slightly different that we haven't covered, which is time zone. That's something that people always ask me about. Again, I work full-time for a company. It's global remote, but most of my team is based in the US, East Coast. So for example, wherever you're on the world, for me right now, it's 7:45 p.m. So if I'm my normal work day, for example, I get up and I kind of have my me time in the morning until about 2 p.m. And then from 2 p.m. to about 10 p.m. I'm working. And if you have a more flexible schedule, of course, you can change that up and make it really your own if you'd like. I have a ton of meetings, so I'm syncing a lot with my team, most like 90% of my day. So from 2 to 10, I'm on lockdown, as I say. So I think it takes a bit more thinking about your schedule. Again, if you do have that flexibility, think about the way you want your day to be. How do you want your energy to be spent and dispersed across the day, and be strategic about how you manage that. And if you do have a tough or more rigorous meeting schedule, try to steal your Thursday, Friday evenings to then be able to, like what he says, go out and network or go and just hang out and experience the city when it's a bit more lively on a weeknight. So try to block your calendar or let your team know, hey, Thursday, Fridays, I want to reserve for me. Definitely try to make sure that you get that social time when the locals are also doing social time.
And then this was a little bit touched on, but I just can't emphasize it enough. Always have a option 2, 3, and 4. When it comes to your work schedules, your housing, your travel plans. And then just because you asked one question doesn't mean you're going to get the same answer. This is coming a lot from my experiences traveling in both West Africa and East Africa. I think a lot of time, and I work mostly right now in East Africa, a lot of people will just say yes, but then you ask another question and then they actually mean no, or they didn't actually. So I think just ask a question multiple times in multiple ways to make sure you are getting the information that you need. And this is when talking with locals. And a lot of people, and it's even tour companies, they might just want to be deferential to you as someone that is, and just want to say yes because they think that's what's going to make you happy. So I think just getting in the habit of having backups and multiple options and then asking questions in multiple ways will help you ensure that you are having the experience that you want to have.
I love that. And speaking of having backups, the chat doesn't seem to be allowing technically people to ask questions. So I have to go to the Q&A here. The chat says anyone can say, but nobody's being able to post. So had to troubleshoot there, and here we are. So we've got some questions in though. So I'm looking at this first one here, and anybody can take these of the hosts. If somebody just wants to address it, or if anybody has something to add, feel free. But yeah, we have a question here that says, hello, I'd like to ask, out of all the places you have been in Africa, which country do you think has the best rule of law and political stability? Does anybody have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I do. I mean, but definitely Rwanda. And just being transparent, I think it's actually, in my opinion, a little bit like too strict even. It can feel a little bit like constricted, but things are very ordered. It's like the cleanest city that I've been to. One of the cleanest cities I've been to ever, anywhere. Very stable. Yeah, and I felt very, very safe there. So that's just my 2 cents. And obviously I've spent a lot of time there. I met my wife there. So yeah, that would be my answer to that question.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a really good one. And I'm sure there's others to explore, but I think that's really good. And we'll try to get through a few of these questions before the hour's up, if that's okay. And then Janet asks, I'm still curious about the options for a female solo traveler looking for community outside of Northern Africa, Morocco, etc., and South Africa, outside of those places. What countries are suitable and have the proper infrastructure as a solo female traveler? Do you guys have anything to say to that one?
In my experience, I've had really positive experiences in Kampala and Nairobi. And so I think it's quite easy to get to a city like that and get connected with other travelers and meet up there. But I feel like I would love to hear other thoughts.
Yeah, I think I would actually agree with those. Again, I would say Accra, Ghana is a great one. I think it depends on the type of community you're looking for, right? If you're looking for locals or you're looking for other expats, you can find a place that has more expats if that's what you're into. If you're looking for locals, I would agree with Nairobi. It has an amazing tech scene as well, and it's pretty easy to connect with people. I don't know, I felt the Kenyans were very warm and easy to get along with. And the same with Ghanaians, pretty friendly and hospitable again. So I would agree there.
Awesome. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful and great answers there. The next one comes from Diego, and it's, where in Namibia would you recommend to be based out of? Are there things there? I could speak to that if anybody else has been there. Do you have ideas on that? And anybody have a good answer there?
Yeah, I have two answers. I think if you're more a city person, Windhoek is the capital. So a lot of people at least fly into there first, spend some days, and probably go off in safari. I think it's a great place to be based out of. Great Wi-Fi, the most amazing sunsets and sunrises I've seen in many cities, surrounded by sand mountains. And there's a pretty good nightlife and like things to do on a day-to-day basis, but not too crazy that you can't focus on what you're there for. And then another city is Swakopmund by the coast, another larger city in the country. You have access to other great things to do around here. There's great dunes. You can go and quad bike in the dunes. You can go to Walvis Bay and see a lot of natural animals and things like that, as well as check out the townships, which are outside of both cities, but you get a sense of how Namibians, I don't want to say real Namibians, but you get a sense of how Namibians on all sides live in both of those cities.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would second both of those. That's what we did, and we had a great time. Lots of good things. We actually were able to hike outside of Windhoek, just the capital, and like hike with giraffes. They're like right there. You're like in the reserve with them. I was like, this is crazy. So cool. And I saw like a giraffe on the way from the airport. I was like, this is wild. I love this. This is so cool. I've never been anywhere like it. So super cool. And then, yeah, along the coast, also very nice. Cool. And then we have a question here that someone has heard from other nomads traveling within the continent that it can be pretty pricey, making it hard to string together different African countries. Do you have any recommendations for affordable routes, travel tricks for country hopping? That's a good question.
Yeah, this is I think in my experience is kind of true. Flights tend to be like overpriced. I think there's just a lot of times like sometimes it's like cheaper to fly to Europe than it can be to fly to like another African country for whatever reason, without getting into the economics of like how the airlines price and stuff like that. I mean, I guess if you can go, depending on how much time you have, if you can go over land, I think that's like number one, it's more adventurous and kind of exciting for me personally, but also it cuts down on cost a lot, and you get a different type of experience, and from there you can experience more countries, I think, kind of easily, especially if they're not so far away from each other. So like when I got to Senegal, I went from Morocco through Western Sahara, Mauritania, and then through the north of Senegal. I did all of that overland. My original plan was to get all the way to Nigeria, but I didn't make it. I blame COVID, but that was my thinking. I wanted to cut costs, but I also wanted to go slow and get more of like a raw experience. So it depends on how flexible you are. That could be an interesting route, just kind of those like north to West Africa, if you have the time and you're flexible about going overland.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, really helpful. And let's see this next one here. For someone that's interested in exploring work opportunities on the continent, but lives in a different part of the world, what are some resources you might recommend for getting a sense of the landscape / finding opportunities? Wei, I feel like you might have some insight in this as a recruiter, but anybody else can speak to it too.
Yeah, number one, send me an email. Yeah, maybe I don't know if we can drop this somewhere after, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to like talk to you. So we do recruiting for like a lot of different roles. I would say more than anything though, it's understanding the organizations that are doing work on the continent and just like kind of keeping up with them. It could be as simple as just like following their LinkedIn pages or like bookmarking their websites, and you kind of check their opportunities. And like I said earlier, a lot of people are super open to talking, especially from people outside of the continent. If you have curiosity and you're interested of like leveraging your experiences or kind of making the leap to working on the continent, people will be very open to kind of sharing their own experience, sharing what opportunities out there. So just be open, reach out, find out the top organizations that are doing work on the continent, and there's a lot of opportunity. But also connecting with recruiters like myself is pretty key too.
Yeah, there's actually a follow-up question just after that from someone else that says, yeah, where to look for roles in companies based in different parts of Africa, like LinkedIn. Is that a good place to start? Recruiters? And then are there certifications you would say are useful or needed? This person has PMP, but wonders if IT certifications help. I'm not familiar with this, so I can't speak to it, but any thoughts?
Are you asking me? Or I don't want to hog the, I feel like I'm hogging this section.
They're kind of
Yeah, okay.
specific.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, let me just see. I'm looking for that question. Okay, I think I see it here. Yeah.
I'm from Jay.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is a good place. I'll be honest, and this is a little bit unfortunate too. Like a lot of the clients we work with, sometimes the role is never posted, even on LinkedIn. They kind of just will give it to us as a search firm, and we just headhunt and kind of reach out to people individually. So yes, you can look at LinkedIn, and there are some organizations that do a good job of circulating, but it's a little bit different. Sometimes you have to kind of know the right people or be in network with people, like recruiters or specific hiring managers or people in those kinds of positions. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the nature of some parts of the economy in different countries, right? Certifications definitely help. We can maybe talk offline about specifics, but they always help. And a lot of times people are looking for specific types of accreditation.
Awesome. Super helpful and very efficient in the answer. I love it. That was great. So yeah, definitely reach out if you guys need any more help. That's awesome. So yeah, just to skip it around a little bit, what is the best safari in Africa? I'd love to hear all of your opinions. That's somebody's good question right there.
Masai Mara is my favorite in Kenya. I think you can also get to Masai Mara from Tanzania, but the landscape was beautiful and we saw so many types of animals. I don't know. It was the only safari I've been on that I actually didn't care that the whole day we were in the car. Like we were in this Jeep just driving around. It just felt like our eyes could see so far. We got to get out and kind of walk around a bit in certain parts of the park. So I think Masai Mara is very high on my list and a high recommendation from me.
I would second that, but to add some diversity, I think Kruger or the private game reserves near Kruger in South Africa are great, but it really also depends on what kinds of animals you are looking to see. So in Uganda, it's the only place where you can see tree climbing lions. You can also do chimp trekking. And there's, we talked about the white rhinos. There's also like West Africa has a lot of unique animals as well. But I think the two main ones are going to be Masai Mara, Serengeti, and then Kruger.
Awesome. Yeah, we got charged by a rhino in the van while touring in Etosha, which was scary, but also really, really exciting. But also everything was fine. Nobody got hurt, anything.
Oh,
but,
you've had a couple like close calls. The leopard, now rhinos. Like, what else do you have?
That was literally within 5 minutes or like 10 minutes of each other too, because we were driving back and it was like sunset time. So there was the leopard we saw, and then we drove up and there was a rhino, which was so cool. So yeah, Namibia I just think has so much to offer and kind of underrated. Yeah, Akuya, as you said, like the safari there is kind of lesser known. Thank you all for attending today's session. Thanks to our awesome hosts. This was incredibly valuable. I think there's so much that people learned from this. I learned a lot, even though I've traveled in some places, but now I know about a ton more that I want to check out as well in Africa. And yeah, hopefully there'll be some more of these coming up for different deep dives into different continents and different places and different things. So please keep an eye out for that. And thanks so much for being here. Thank you to our hosts. Take care, guys. Everybody have a great rest of the day.
See you guys. Thank you.